Welcome back. Today we will learn about slicers in Power BI. Slicers are a useful tool that allows filtering for different types of data like text, dates, and numbers. Let's dive into working with slicers for text. Go to the visualization pane and select the slicer icon. It's located before the table icon. Look at the visualization pane. You'll see a section called Fields. This is where you can add the data you want to show in the slicer. Simply drag or click on a field to add it. You can add multiple fields here, no need to create separate slicers for each one. For example, add the category field and it will display all the available categories. Now let's create a table to see how the slicer works. Select the table visual. Add category, subcategory, and sales to the table. Now go back to the slicer. You'll see all three categories displayed. Select one category, like technology. The table will automatically update to show only the data for that category. You can also select multiple categories at once. When you're done filtering, you can remove the selection. There's a button in the slicer for this. Click it, and all data will display again without any filter applied. You can add more fields to the slicer, like region. After adding region, the slicer will change slightly. It will now show a drop-down option. You can click this drop-down and select any region you want. You can also create multiple hierarchies in a single slicer. For example, add the segment to the slicer. After adding segment to the slicer, it becomes more detailed, showing both categories and segments. This saves time because you don't need to create separate slicers for each hierarchy. You can manage everything from one slicer. You can experiment with any visual to observe how the slicer functions. Slicers are compatible with all types of visuals. Now that we've learned how to create a slicer, it's time to move on to formatting it. For a better understanding of the formatting in slicers, I removed two fields. Now only one field remains. In our slicer, we can see various values. By default, you can select multiple values using the Control key combined with a click. However, not everyone might find it convenient to use two keys simultaneously, especially during a presentation. To address this, you can modify the slicer settings to make selection easier. Here's how. Go to the Format pane. Click on Slicer Settings. Under the Selection option, you'll find three options. By default, the Multi-Select with Control option is enabled. You can deactivate this option, allowing users to select multiple values with a single click. The default style for slicer values is displayed in a vertical list. To change the slicer style, in the slicer settings, click on the Options drop-down. You'll see three styling options. Choose the one that fits your needs. Additionally, you can apply borders to the slicer. Click on Values, then enable Border. Customize the border's color, width, and style as needed. To explore date slicers, create a slicer and add a date field, such as Order Date. You'll notice the date format appears as month, day, year. To select dates, use the slider. Or click on the calendar icon for easier selection. The date slicer offers unique formatting features compared to other slicers. Let's explore them. Go to Format pane. In the slicer settings, under Style, you'll find options between Is Default Style, where both start and end dates can be adjusted. After, the end date is fixed and only the start date is adjustable. The Relative Date Slicer allows you to apply time-based filters to any date column. Now set the parameters. In the first setting, you can choose Last, Next, or This. Here I select Last. In the second setting, define the range. As I enter 8, and in the third setting, select the unit days, weeks, months, or years. I selected years and set last 8 years. The slicer will display data from 2016 to 2024. The relative time works similarly, but it has units like minutes and hours for more granular filtering. Vertical list, similar to drop-down, but lacks the All option. SubRX displays all options, allowing multiple selections. Tile displays values horizontally, offering a compact design. These slider handles are activated by default, but can be customized. To adjust slider handles, go to General Settings, then Properties, then Advanced Options. Disable the responsive option to modify slider handles. These formatting options ensure that your slicer is visually appealing, user-friendly, and aligned with your presentation needs. To use a date hierarchy, in the Fields pane, click the drop-down for the Date field and select Date Hierarchy. You can now select levels, such as year, quarter, month, or day. Styling options include vertical list and drop-down. To add a Select All button, enable the Show Select All option under Selection. Now that you've learned how to use slicers for text and date, let's explore how they work with numerical data. Select a slicer and assign quantity as its field. The slicer will display the minimum and maximum values in the quantity column. You can filter the data by moving the slider handles to define a range, or manually entering specific values. For example, if you want to filter the data to display only subcategories with quantities between 12 and 14, adjust the slider or input the range directly. The table will instantly update to show only the subcategories within this specified range. This approach makes it easier to focus on relevant subsets of data for detailed analysis. It also demonstrates the versatility of slicers in refining data views and gaining insights based on dynamic, user-defined criteria.